All right, we got to do another check-in with Scott Beatty, WDWS Illini Radio Network, because Illini baseball continues to roll. Scott, how are you, man? A lot's happened. Illinois just keeps winning since we've had you on, so we might as well have you on before the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, what a ride this has been. It's incredible what this team has pulled off. This is a team, and I'm not trying to knock them because it's a very talented team, but it's a team that, and I think we touched on this last time I was on, that is the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And when you have a group that's dedicated to a mission, man, I mean, this is what's the beauty of sports. And here we are. I did not see first place coming. Maybe shame on me, but nobody in the preseason predicted Illinois either within the top six. This has turned into a very special season.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that, kind of zoom out here a little bit, but let's zoom in on the weekend that was, Scott, because Illinois not only wins the Big Ten title, and Scott is in Omaha, by the way, for the start of the Big Ten tournament, but Illinois not only wins the Big Ten, number one seed in the Big Ten tournament this week, but they do it with some fireworks. I mean, a 1-run win over Purdue on Thursday. It's kind of hung on there. 7-run seventh inning in game 2 they get 3 homers in that one. To win a share of the Big Ten title, and then that 8-run sixth to come from behind and win game 3 with 3 homers, and they win it outright. What was that weekend like to see and to call?
Well, what did I tell you last time? That Illinois doesn't win a lot of 5-3 games, and then they win the first one 5-4. My bad. But then by the end of the weekend, they're winning 18-10. I mean, it was really good for them to win a tight, low-scoring game because that's the norm in postseason play. But yet they just continue to be overwhelming with their bats. I continue to walk into some of these series going, well, I hope they can do this or take care of that, and then they end up owning the opposing pitching staff by and large. There's been some starters that have really shut down Illinois, but I don't see nobody has thoroughly quieted the bats all year long, and it's pretty impressive. And then you had you had the awkward. It was a Friday night chance to clinch a share, and so if you win, there's going to be a celebration, but the team wants the outright title, right? So you have to wait for that. Well, you go into Saturday needing either a win or a Nebraska loss. Nebraska loses somewhere around the first or second inning. And so Illinois is already the outright champs, but you're not going to celebrate after a loss. That's just not how that works. So they had to beat Purdue, not only to clinch an outright title, but have a chance to dogpile. It was a little more subdued celebration on the clinch of the share, even though there was a trophy and T-shirts and all that, and it was a pretty emotional night. So it was an exhausting weekend in a very good way. And this team just nobody would have thought 18-6.
Yeah, and this lineup, it can go quiet for like a stretch of innings, right? The end of game 1, the beginning of game 2, and then it just explodes. Opposing pitchers just can never seemingly be comfortable here, Scott. Like, you've watched this all year. Just what is the dynamic of this lineup?
I think there's no breaks in it for pitchers, even where you see the lesser power numbers. There's nobody that's really just having consistently bad at bats. There's guys that kind of done a little bit of up and down here, especially lately. That's largely baseball, right? But in college baseball, you can't afford to have a 7-game stretch like you can in the big leagues where you can just kind of ride that out because there's 162. The conference season is 24 games. Every game is really meaningful. And by and large, 1 through 9, there's no break in terms of everybody's going to battle. Everybody's been grinding it out. And you can see some inconsistencies here and there, but man, when a pitcher is looking at it going, okay, well, if I work around this guy, then I got to deal with that guy. And when your 7-hole guy is having a career year with double-digit home runs, and the 8-hole was on a 20-game hitting streak in the middle of the year, and the 9-hole is a replacement for a freshman spark plug and comes out to have the most amazing story. Connor Milton, of course. I mean, where's the break in the meat of the lineup? Any one of them can send it over the wall. So there's just no let up. I think it could be an intimidating lineup, and I think it just wears down pitchers is ultimately what it does. Purdue's starter on Friday was 12 up, 12 down against the Illini. Then he gave up a home run, I think, and a walk or something. They pulled him, and then the Illini just punched him with an 8-run or 7-run inning, whatever it was, with Cam Janik's grand slam. I mean, there's just always that looming, when's it going to come? When's the hammer coming down? And when it does, it's a big inning.
Yeah, and I don't want this to get overlooked. I thought the relief work was so good over the weekend for the most part. I mean, Ben Plumlee with some huge innings. Glassy, the closer's been great. Jake Rons, Corey Bunsenmiller in that last game. Is this bullpen kind of been the unsung hero here recently?
Yeah, I think the floor level is really good with this bullpen. There's not one guy where you're going, oh man. Even though there's not a Tyler J type, to throw back to 2015. But you turn around, all of a sudden, Joe Glassy has 8 saves, and he can do a 2-inning save for you if you need. And if one guy's doesn't have it, they've had another piece to come in. And granted, it's worked in complement with an offense that's averaging over 8 runs a game, so that leaves some room for error. But yeah, I mean, these guys have just stepped up. Ben Plumlee this is his breakout season. And Joe Glassy I don't know that there's team captains that have ever been named, but he is sort of that guy in the back end. And he was done. He had gotten his degree last year. He did not have to come back. And he is somebody who has a bright working future ahead of him with or without professional ball, because he's really smart and can do a lot of things. And he's like, I want to come back for this. He came back from basically a 500 team that was scuffling last year. I mean, and he's not the only one, Brody Harding and others that wanted to come back and just do this. So when you have a group dedicated to a mission and are playing for each other, look out.
You've been around Dan Hartleb a lot over the years. How are his fingerprints on this team?
Well, I think he empowers his coaching staff. I just was telling somebody this. He's a really good CEO type. He understands how to run a program. He understands the baseball, of course. He understands the program, and he understands what a winning formula is. When you talk about Big Ten football, the comp there is, okay, whatever we are, we're going to be a running team that can, and the solid defense and kind of those, I think Brett Bielema talks about it, here's A, B, and C, the kind of the elements that more often than not, you're going to win a game if you do this. Well, more often than not, if you have teams that provide grinded out quality at bats, if you field cleanly, and Illinois is again one of the best fielding teams in the conference, and if you can get competitive pitching, now you add in, guys that can swing it, and that just takes you over the top. But that formula has always been grinded out at bats, solid defense up the middle. Dan's a catcher at heart. I mean, he's always had good catchers, and Cam Janik arguably is your offensive player of the year at least for the team. In my opinion, that's not to take away what some of the other huge numbers are on that team. So that's just kind of who he is, and it kind of reflects his personality.
Dan has been so steady. Like, there's rarely bad years, right? Like they're always in the top half. Like they've had one finish in the bottom 10th or lower in his entire tenure, 18 years here. He's got 12 of 18 years or top 5 in the Big Ten. It's just consistency, but this is a rare year. Like when we're talking about special, like 2015, I don't think anything will touch that. 50 wins, super regional. You host it. You had Vanderbilt here with Dansby Swanson and Carson Fulmer and Walker Buehler. Like that might not happen again. Those are rare, but is this the second best year of his tenure?
It's the best coaching year he's ever done. Again, I want to make sure that there's a lot of talent on this team, but it's also a team that started 5-10. It could have splintered. They have figured out how to maximize everybody on that roster. There might have been other years where the aggregate talent was higher. I mean, you go back to 18 and 19, and it was also still back when there was 40 rounds of drafts. We just go future pro, future pro, future pro, future big leaguer. There was some really good talent. This team is just a really good college baseball team. That's what it is. And so I think this is they would immediately sort of, this is the best coaching job I've seen, from top to bottom. And the way you cannot dismiss how an interim pitching coach in Cam Hill has come in and stepped into a tough situation with Mark Allen and his health challenges and hasn't missed a beat. That's pretty impressive.
Absolutely. Well, Scott, you are in Omaha for the Big Ten tournament. Double elimination for those that don't know. The bracket can get a little wonky, so you gotta look at it online. I can't do it justice over audio here, but the Illini start on Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central Time against Penn State, the number 8 seed. They had the choice of playing Tuesday night or Wednesday afternoon, potentially get a little extra rest. Do you know what went into that of deciding to play Tuesday night?
I think it ultimately comes down to what Jack Crowder's health was, or not health, excuse me, his how ready he feels, because he threw Thursday and Tuesday is now a 5-day window. That's normal in the pros. In college, your starters are usually going 7 days. And then with the series moved up at Purdue, he went 6 days, and now he'll go on 5 days rest. So I think that's question number one. But the other question is do you want your day of rest up front, or do you want your day of rest in between? By virtue of the side of the bracket that Illinois is on, and they have Wednesday off by choosing to play Tuesday no matter what. So you're saving everybody else that you don't use on Tuesday, whatever way. Last year, it was if you win on Tuesday because of their seed, you get a day of rest. If you lose, you had to play Wednesday. But this year, it doesn't matter. They're going to play Tuesday. They're going to play Thursday. So it's just a feel for, as you look up and down their staff, it's probably 6 or a half dozen in the end of it all. But this is the way that Illinois went.
What do you think of their path and their chances to go far and potentially win this thing?
Yeah, I like that you won't see Nebraska or Indiana until the weekend if you can get there. Iowa still is scary with their starting pitching. That's their strength. And Michigan, they haven't seen. They're going to see Iowa or Michigan win or lose on Thursday, one of those two teams. And Michigan has at times looked really solid, at times has been inconsistent. Penn State, as an 8 seed, they have a really good Friday starter in Travis Linsman. And Illinois got to him when they were at Illinois Field, but it's baseball. So it's easier to win series than it is games sometimes in baseball. So there's nothing you can take for granted. In this, it's not necessarily like the same as the 1-8 seed in a Big Ten basketball tournament because of the variance of baseball. I think there's a solid chance, though, for Illinois to be in the weekend. I really do, because every time I've wondered, all of a sudden that lineup comes rolling along and just overwhelms opposing pitching staffs. So I like Illinois' chances, but I think Nebraska's got a real shot. I think Indiana's playing its best. It's not the same Indiana team that Illinois saw in March. And Iowa was picked to win the league at the beginning of the whole thing. So that was not for nothing.
Yeah. All right, Scott. To make it a truly special season, you want to be playing in the NCAA tournament. Illinois has shot up in the RPI, now number 43 the last I checked. How important is this week for their NCAA tournament chances, or with an outright title, with what now, top 45, top 50 in the RPI? Should they feel confident in their NCAA tournament resume?
Well, I don't yet. I like their resume right now. And I think if this tournament was not to be played, I actually think Illinois' chances at this moment would be really good. Here's the problem. Most people that look at these brackets, look at D1, Baseball America, there's some other outlets, think 2 teams will go from the Big Ten. Nebraska's safe, probably. Their RPI, their whole resume is strong enough. If Illinois does not win this tournament and Nebraska does not win this tournament, that's a bid that's going to, let's say, Indiana, if they win it, for example. Well, now what do you do with Nebraska's in? Probably. And what are you going to do with the Big Ten champions that's 18-6? I don't know. I mean, is the selection committee going to leave out the top team from a power conference, albeit it's not the same because it's a Northern Conference, but it's still the Big Ten, right? I don't know what they would do. So I'm a little nervous for Illinois' sake that if they don't win the tournament, that the selection committee will sit there and ponder it a whole lot. But at the same time, how can you ignore what they've done and the resume they've built up here? I would feel better if they win at least 2 games here and go into the weekend. In fact, go 2-0 and go into the weekend. And so come out of here at least 2-2, if not 3-2 or whatever it is. The best thing you can do is just win the whole darn thing, which is what they needed to do going into Purdue. They needed to win 2 or 3 or sweep, and they just did it. So that's probably what they should do is just win the whole thing.
I'll give them this. Like going into last week, Scott, I thought they might have to win the Big Ten tournament. Now, after winning 7 of their last 8 games, including Iowa and Purdue getting 5 there, it feels like, yeah, like you're right. Like, yeah, just win a couple games and there's a little to no doubt that they would make the NCAA tournament. So they've done a lot of work, but yeah, it just feels like they got a little extra to do.
Yeah, they're very bubble-ish right now. And I think it's probably a reflection of where the league's at this year. There's not a ton of gap between 1 and 8. Even Maryland didn't make the Big Ten tournament, and they got a better profile, RPI wise. And Rutgers, I don't know what happened to them because they're not a bad team, but they absolutely bombed in Big Ten play. So this is a really interesting year. 2018, Illinois had I thought a solid resume to get in, and they didn't. There was a bid stolen by Northeastern. 2019, they rolled into it. But again, I go back to, can you not put in a regular season champion into the field of 64 from a large conference like the Big Ten? Like, what are we doing if you can't do that?
I would agree.
That's either a problem from the selection committee standpoint and RPI, or that's a problem for the Big Ten if that doesn't happen.
I agree completely with all of that. Well, Scott Beatty, as always, appreciate the insight into this fun Illini baseball team. Big week ahead at Omaha. You'll be on the call. You can hear it. Illini Radio Network, WDWS, as always. Scott, appreciate the insight and have fun out there in Omaha, man.
We do. We will. Hoping to stay here for a week.
That's right. Thank you, Scott.